Welcome to Ksok Uncensored. Today's special guest is Ron Ward. Ron is a former federal law enforcement academy director. He is an author of a book that I cannot wait to get my hands on, The Dirty Side of Leadership. And he is a leadership trainer. I cannot wait. We're going to dive into all sorts of subjects today. Ron has amazing credentials and he's done so much in his lifetime. Come on in, Ron. Hey, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Kristen, I'm so glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, you have accomplished so much. It's really exciting for me to be able to have this time to connect. And I want to work backwards because I want to talk about something that you've accomplished most recently. And that is the fact that you have recently rolled out an interview training course on best practices with interviewing. And that got me thinking, it's such a different world pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. There's so much that's changed in the job market. Can you tell us a little bit about this course?
Yes, I'm happy to. Uh, Having a government executive position, I interviewed a lot of people. I served on panels for different executives. And I have to tell you this, I probably interviewed, I don't know, over 100 people. And only maybe 2 to 3 people interviewed well. And people used to always say, like, I'll wing it. And people think they can just walk in and interview, but there are a lot of guidelines and there's a framework that you can build. I also developed something called transition words, and I help people transition their sentences. And what I wanted to do was make this course really unique. So I do a live coaching event that shows the techniques in action. And I didn't see that in any other course. And of course, we use some really cool graphics. We address those questions like, if you were a fruit, what kind would you be and why? And but you mentioned the pandemic. The pandemic has changed the playing field in a lot of ways. A lot of job interviews are happening virtually, with Zoom, Teams, etc. So there are things that you can do as far as being on camera. We know you're not going to be shaking hands. We teach people, a good smile, a head nod when you're being introduced. But eye contact is still important. Some people told me they started reading a document while they're interviewing, and you still got to be prepared. You can put some notes on the screen, though. You can cheat just a little. But yeah, things have changed some. And then even if you're interviewing live, the handshake is something like, I was taught as a kid, you judge someone by their handshake, if they have a good handshake. And that's kind of went away. Do you fist bump? Do you handshake? So we try to delve into all those questions. And of course, a lot of companies are asking, have you been vaccinated? They're asking, your position on various things related to the pandemic. So we don't tell people what to say on that, but we certainly prepare them. You must be ready for these things. So yeah, I'm really excited about this course.
That sounds awesome. Okay, wait. So I have to tell you a few things. I have to tell you my absolute um the worst question I feel that you can ask when you're interviewing somebody, or at least the one that I hate the most, is when someone says, "Tell me about yourself." Because for me, it's like the easiest question, but it can go so wrong. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. When I've tried to coach people when they're going in for an interview, I'm like, the objective is, this is a job. They don't want to know all of your hobbies. It's like 90% about you in the workplace and 10% about you as an individual. Would you say that's accurate, or is that not truly the case?
No, I think that's very close. And it's interesting you asked me that question. That is the first question that we rehearse. We actually practice that question and when to transition. What happens is, I used to have people come in, they're nervous and they want to get some things across, and they will give you their whole life story. And you want to ask them some more questions, but you want to say, well, that's the end of the interview. You just gave us your whole life in 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So interview answer should be about 120 seconds, and they should seriously only highlight a few things like it's an outline to answer that particular question, because there's going to be plenty of other questions.
Right, right. No, I really appreciate that. And it's one of those things. I've interviewed someone before and they told me about CrossFit. I would say they spent 20 minutes talking about CrossFit. And I'm like, wow, wow, like I get it. That's awesome. I love that you're physically fit and that you're into it, but you're interviewing for a job. Like
Yeah.
that's not at CrossFit. So yeah, so that is so important. And people, as much as I don't like that question, I know how to navigate through it, but so many people do not. And so I think that's huge that you address that. The other thing is I've never heard the fruit one. I've never been asked the fruit one. I love that. And I would say I'm a raspberry. But no, I I am curious. Can I give you the why on that? Can you critique me?
Please, yes. I
Okay.
think everyone wants to hear that.
Okay. So one, it's my favorite fruit. I'm into berries. Berries are like super important. They go back to ancestral eating. With raspberries, I like raspberries because it's not just one tone or one note. You're getting some bitterness, and then you're also getting the sweet. And so it's complex and it brings a lot to the table. There you go. I don't know. I don't know how else I can go on raspberries.
That's great. When you said bitter, I might figure out,
Negative. Yeah.
maybe a way that, you ask questions if you don't understand something, or I don't know. But no, that's great. The reason we added that, a lot of the new companies are asking, if you were a color, what color would you be and why? If you were an animal, what animal would you be and why? But here's the thing, they are not looking for necessarily looking for the details of that. They want to see how you process information. And what you just did, if you do that confidently, you would have aced that question, because they want people who can think on their feet. And how do you process information? And believe it or not, some people panic on that. I've had people literally tell me they just completely went blank. And one other thing with the interview course is I teach salary negotiation, and that's another one, and
Ooh.
strengths and weaknesses. That's really
Mhm.
tough for people to answer. So I try to provide some guidance on that.
Oh, I love that. I'm sorry, it's just speaking to me. I feel like especially women, generally, and I've read studies where men generally will negotiate and women will generally take their initial offer. Is that still the case?
Um, I have to be honest, Kristen, I did not look at that because we were setting up a framework, so it applied,
Right.
to males or females. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I've
But
heard that.
sometimes I think when I have people call me all the time. I have to say this as a side note. I get so many calls about interviews that I developed a course partly just to rescue my time. Now when people call, I go, "Hey, I have a course." I had someone contact me today, and I was able, for the first time ever, to go, "I just did a course on that." So it's going to free up
I
some of
love
my
it.
time. I want to help
I
people as much as I can.
I
But
wanna take that
salary,
course.
well,
Honestly, I really do. Where do you find this course at?
yeah, it's on at forwardoperations.com, and that's with a Ford, WARD. It's a play on my last name, forwardoperations.com. It's in my link tree on my Instagram. You and I follow each other.
Right.
It's in there.
Okay.
But I was telling you, the top questions I get is salary negotiation, strengths and weaknesses. That's one that people get really intimidated by. So yeah, there's a lot of good information in the course.
Oh gosh, yes, the strengths and weaknesses. I know it's like you wanna be honest. You don't wanna say, "I don't have any weaknesses." But then you're like, "They're gonna mega judge me on whatever I say." So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We just need to take the course, everybody, because 'cause I'm, like, really excited about this. But, I am curious if you could give us just a little something on how do you handle the weakness piece of it? Because that to me is intimidating.
You tell them you're a fruit and you're bitter. I'm kidding. Um, so the weakness, it's okay. What I teach people to do, for example, I'm not organized. So the way you want to do that is you always want to put some type of a positive spin on that. So if I say, um, practically speaking, I'm not very organized, so I've worked hard to put systems in place to keep me on track. Or you might say, I've trouble sometimes saying no, and I've tried to develop a priority level so that I will know when to use the word no. So you show that I recognize I have a weakness, but I'm working on that weakness. I've taken steps to try to improve.
Oh my gosh. Love it, love it, love it, because both of those are me. So, yes, thank you for this. This is just so, I feel so selfish in this. I'm like, this is all for me, but all the viewers are going to love it too, because oh my gosh, if it's something that resonates with me, it's going to resonate with so many other people. So I think it's amazing that you created this course. I can't wait to take it. And I hope people watching will also do the same, because it's like we need to help ourselves and continue to develop ourselves, even if we're like deep into a career. I think it's always important to continue to grow. And the world is changing around us, and just even pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, things have changed. So thank you
Really
so
has.
much for that, Ron. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'd like to transition to your book. So, The Dirty Side of Leadership. What inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, I'm going to be brief on this, but one of the inspirations was because I said I'm unorganized, I developed a decision making process because I would make a decision, not a super important decision, but I would decide something one day, and a month later, I'd make a similar decision and it would be different. And finally, a great employee kind of confronted me and said, well, you did this last month. Why are we doing this? And I realized I need a better process. So through it took a year, but I developed a decision making process. I started working on my communication, direct communication, all these things. And I began to share that with other leaders. I didn't tell them I developed it. And I would get phone calls like, oh my God, this is great stuff. I love it. This has helped me so much. And I started thinking, I think I'm onto something. And just quickly, the preface of the book is the night before I had to terminate a federal agent. And Kristen, I competed all over the country in karate tournaments. I was more nervous about terminating this federal employee than I was doing these competitions. So I realized I've taken all these training programs, I've read all these books, and I'm not prepared for this moment. So I went on a quest to build my courage, and I've got a system, including grounded breathing, that we're training FBI and the military on how to develop your courage, because basically you get more comfortable with what you do repetitiously. The more you do something, the more comfortable you become. So I train people to start coaching and using direct conversations. Here's something funny, but we communicate very well to our pets or even our children, but then we get shy or we're uncomfortable communicating to colleagues or a staff member that reports to us. Now, I'm not telling people to talk to them like you do your dog. I'm saying we can practice direct communication. And I literally teach people how to do that and have them practice. And I've had email after email of taking people through my courage building process, and they will call me and say, I call it making uncomfortable conversations more comfortable. And I've had so many wonderful reports of people being able to use that process. And, it's improved their leadership a great deal.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. I couldn't help but visualize myself talking to someone like I talk to my dogs, because my husband, when he hears me talk to, I have two chihuahuas. And he's like, wow, I how did I marry someone that talks to dogs like this? It's pretty embarrassing. But yeah, no, I think what you're so right. It's more like direct, and we're not beating around the bush. And oh, I love that. And I can't wait to read it. I know Drew's already diving in, and he's pretty excited about it. So, fantastic, fantastic. I want to ask you, talking about leadership, and I know, we spoke a little bit before on this. What is the Biden administration doing wrong as far as leadership is concerned?
Uh, how long is this broadcast? That was a joke. So there are numerous problems, but with any leader, you got to have a strong foundation and you got to protect your staff. So in this case, Biden's staff is Americans. So, we're going to have over 1 million people cross the border with no plan. And because of my positions, and I was chair of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Accreditation Board, I know people pretty high up in most federal law enforcement agencies. And the Border Patrol says it's literally an absolute disaster. And fentanyl is coming across the country 1,000 times higher than it was before. So that's just one area. You have to protect your borders. We lock our doors. You got to protect your children. You got to protect your staff. Security is the number one thing that you have to do, and that's entrusted in a president of the United States, and we are not seeing that. And unfortunately, because unless you live in southern Texas, you're on the border, you know more of what's going on. I think we're getting filtered information on that. But the Border Patrol tells me that it's an absolute disaster. And and we talk so much about COVID, and we're bringing people across the border at record numbers. There's so many contradictions in the leadership. Then you move over into, it's great to have a vision. This country, of course, we want to ultimately someday go to electric, or we need to find ways of being very efficient, but we're not there. So you have to take intermediate steps. We're not ready to go full electric for probably 20 years. So you have to begin to become energy independent, because again, it's ultimately, and I get it, people will always argue, but it's going to affect our security. It's going to affect us as a nation.
Right.
There's so many, I could go on and on and on,
Well,
but I even thought about developing a leadership program and just do the opposite of what I'm seeing.
seriously. I know. It's so wild. As you're speaking, I'm thinking about I was just at a leadership conference. It was the Reawaken America tour with Clay Clark. And they were talking about people that have worked for Trump, and even Eric Trump was there. And they were talking about, really what made him this amazing leader. And that's the fact that he listened to people. And there was a woman there who was a receptionist who worked for Trump in the 90s. She was a receptionist in the 90s. And she said he would walk in once a week and he would check in with us. How are things going? And we would tell him the pitfalls that we're experiencing. And he would actually address them with his resources. They would be addressed. And we have the complete opposite right now. We don't have someone who listens to the people. We have the complete opposite. I mean, and then today there's an event, and I'm not sure if you saw the footage because it's just brand new, but there's footage of Biden like staring off at a curtain. Meanwhile, the group he's by himself, and then there's a group of folks talking to Obama, and it's like, who is in charge here? Like literally, like what is happening? And so it's really, and I know you'll likely agree with me on this, that weak leadership, not only just weak communication, but physically weak and ailing, you can tell. It has really made us vulnerable as a country. And as much as some people had a distaste for Trump and the way he carried himself, people didn't mess with him. And right now, with that wide open southern border and an ailing leader, it's very, very scary. So those leadership skills are so incredibly important. And what we're seeing right now has left 80% of America scratching our heads.
Yeah. Kristen, leadership cannot be emotional. And unfortunately, most of the arguments are emotional based. And we need to be evidence based. We need to be factual. When Reagan said peace through strength, it means something. And there's a lot of people don't like it, but we are the beacon of hope. We are the country that people look to. And I thought it was interesting when Kamala Harris said, we're going to the root cause. Now that sounds evidence based. And I was like, that's interesting. Well, one of the root causes is when you say the border's open, that's a root cause because people hear the cry of the United States president. And when people respond, you mentioned Trump, they responded. I've had so many of my friends, and I've got liberal friends, but I go, what do you like about Biden? Or what policy did you disagree with Trump? And it's basically, I didn't like him. He's
Right,
rude.
right.
But I can't have a policy discussion. And we've got to come back to the point of discussing policy and security and safety and things that make sense. Or as Warren Buffett's assistant said, uncommon sense is what we need now.
Right, right. Seriously. That is the difference. And being here in Portland, Oregon, I'm surrounded by liberals, and I do have quite a few liberal friends, and it's wild because I know my parameters, and they know I've been, this is one of the things I've been talking with a lot of guests about is I've been out of the closet. That's the new thing. When did you come out conservative? Like people are serious. When did you
Yeah,
come out? And I'm like,
yeah.
baby, I've been out. But I'm a longtime conservative. But where I'm even going with this is my friends know where I stand, even my liberal friends. And that's just, and we just decide not to talk about politics. But that said, when I really think about why they are on the left side, I think it's a lot of them mean well. I mean, I really feel that a lot of people really just want the same things. Like we want freedom, we want the best for our families and for our friends.
Mhm.
But it's just those folks generally are, and just thinking about those friends, emotionally driven where I would say I have half man brain. I'm like more factually and like being very rational and I'm and fact based. And so hurt feelings, that doesn't really happen for me. And it's really hard to hurt my feelings. But I guess for me, it's like when I really try to drill down to why these folks are on the left, it is emotionally based. And you're right, we have to get away from that because that is solving nothing, or it's, that where they're really focused on what's, I can't remember the exact term, but it's like where there's just one thing that has caused them to vote left. Like maybe it's in the past, maybe it was gay marriage. That's that one
Mhm.
topic
Correct.
that has caused them to vote left versus like the 500 other things that affect their day-to-day lives. So you're spot on with that.
Kristen, you're so right. And another thing, I just had a conversation. I teach at a university with. I was speaking to a liberal professor, and they want to denounce some of the radical parts of the Democrat Party. But the problem is when you pull the vote, when you vote, you're voting for the full gamut. It's not a partial vote. So you got
Right.
to decide which do I agree. The bottom line is no one gets everything they want. So you got to weigh it out. Do I agree more with this overall philosophy on the right, or do I agree with the overall philosophy on the left? And you got to let your conscience be your guide on that. But you can't
Right. Right.
discredit the radical movement, the woke leftists that are really controlling the narrative, which is sad because I don't think there are that many. I think there's sensible people in both
Right.
parties, but they certainly have the voice, and you got to make a decision. Who am I going to support?
Right. Right. Exactly. And I have to tell you, Ron, and actually I don't know this about you. Have you when did you come out of the closet? That conservative closet.
I actually was hoping you would ask. I started to tell you when we spoke a minute before that very quickly. I was young, and Ronald Reagan was running against Michael Dukakis. And I grew up in coal mining. That's what makes my book, I think, funny. It's humorous, bullying, tragedy, all that, because I grew up in coal country, and literally, I mean, there was no culture, no anything. So I was told as a kid, Democrats are for the poor and Republicans are for the rich. So of course I believe that. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, "I bet you're excited about Reagan." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm voting for Dukakis." And he looked at me and said, "Oh my God, you are the most conservative guy I know." I said, "What's conservative? What do you mean by that?" I did not even let politics enter my brain.
Right.
And when he said that, I went back. I'm going to date myself. You didn't have Google, let's put it that way. So I started doing old fashioned research, and I start looking. I'll never forget that. I went, "Oh my God, I think I'm a Republican." I even
You're like,
talked to my parents.
wait.
My
Yeah.
parents, my parents, of course, my dad disagreed, and the people around me disagreed, my whole family, because it was union. It was mining, coal mining, and the union was so important. Later, I became a police officer and had to deal with the union strikes, which is unbelievable. And I remember being disillusioned with that. But I also, one last thing is, I do remember, I knew I was supposed to be Democrat, but when Ronald Reagan would give a speech, I would almost want to stand up in the living room and
Yes.
salute. Like it made me feel proud to be an American. But that was the moment. And from then on, and of course, when you hold a position in the government like I did, which it didn't apply when President Obama got elected, because I would walk in offices and people would have Michelle, they'd have the president all over the office. But in my part of the government, you could not speak about politics. It was against
Wow.
the code of, which is honestly, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
You're in a
I
law
was just
enforcement
thinking.
position.
I was just thinking that's like the workplace, most places, it really should be off the table. But that would be tough nonetheless when you work for the government.
Well, and of course, you certainly couldn't have a picture of President Trump in your office.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I
Your
can't
career
even.
would be your career would be stifled.
Right, right, and that's it's so sad, but, I have to go back to the Ronald Reagan. So I was, I was born in '81, and so, Ronald Reagan was on TV at one point, and my parents have told me this so many times, but I said to my parents, "Is that God?" And they're like, "No, honey." But, that tells me, it's weird, I got chills for that. It's funny, it tells me that he had that appeal to me as well at a very, very young age. Like, how you said you wanted to stand up and salute. Like clearly he talked to me, he touched me at a very young age. And so pretty awesome. And now that I look back and I've spent time, researching his policy and his stance, and it makes sense. It makes sense that I've been wired like that a long time. But to your point, there are so many people out there in your position where that's really what they were told growing up. And like you said, now we have a little quiz. You can just go online and what's my political stance, right? And you just answer all these questions, and it'll
Yeah,
tell you pretty much where you lean.
right.
Yeah, that wasn't around then. Um, and so that's a tough one, but I have to tell you, I have so much respect for folks, and I've had so many people on the podcast that were not always conservative, that they've made a switch, even though their entire family is still left leaning. All their friends are left leaning. A lot of them have not been invited to Thanksgiving, Christmas. I mean, just, but they really had to do, and a lot of it's been in the last 4 or 5 years. They really had to look within and realize, wow, I just no longer align with the left.
Right.
And so it's, you have to be so bold, to be able to step out on your own with your own beliefs like that when you have so much opposition.
Kristen, and when I say in the closet, I was never in the closet. Anyone that worked closely with me, it's very evident when you're conservative. As a matter of fact, at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, we kept the news playing in our office. Believe it or not, I know that's going to give people reassurance, but we watch the news to see what's happening. So you keep that on just in case there's something. So I would have my TV on Fox, and I had a coworker, a guy that I really liked a lot. I would go to the restroom or something. I'd walk back in and my TV's on CNN in my
Oh,
office, and we would get I know, but it was funny. He was playing a little joke on me, and I'm a good sport.
that's,
I thought it was funny, and I would yell down the hallway, "Fake news!" But anyway,
I love
keep
that. See, that's
coming, keep
fun. I
coming.
like that. Hey, I would prefer that over someone like duct taping my chair to my desk, which someone's done before. I'm all about fun, but when it takes me 20 minutes just to sit down in the morning, that irritates me. But so yeah, that's actually pretty comical. I like it. That's something. It's so funny. CNN's viewership is plummeting, but yet I go to the gym. What are they playing? CNN, and that's the last thing I want to see when I'm trying to work out and better my life. Is fake news. But I feel like all of these public places, especially here in the Portland area, they're playing CNN. I'm like, really, really, people.
No,
But
that even happened in Charleston, and of course, we know they got the airport contracts. They got a lock there. When you're in the airports, it's CNN or MSNBC. It's
well,
pretty
you know
interesting.
what? That makes total sense because I even said to myself, I was like, I bet the gym has a contract with them to play their news. So I guess, okay, so that's a legitimate, that makes sense. That makes sense. I wasn't thinking of it like a business person, but that makes sense that they likely have a contract with the gym to always have it up.
Yeah, I think the small businesses are just afraid to take a stand. I don't know the answer to all that, but yeah, the
Yeah.
airports certainly have a contract with,
Interesting.
CNN
Yeah,
has a
for
contract.
sure. Okay, so to pivot to law enforcement, because as you know, my husband's a police officer in the Portland area, and oh gosh, being a Leo wife, so it's a wild ride. I feel like I am pretty good at dealing with what he brings home, which is, I was just telling someone the other day, and they told me I was a sicko. But I actually really enjoy hearing about the maybe the not so pleasant calls. I at the same time, I also feel like it's really good for him to be able to have that person to talk about things to.
Sure.
Um, I have to tell you, Ron, like this is going to sound totally callous, but this is, in Portland, homicide and gun violence is just skyrocketing, skyrocketing. I mean, I feel like we're gonna meet Chicago's numbers soon. But so the other night, my husband's like, "Yeah, I was on a shots call," and I was like, "Shot, shot, shot, shot," doing that song that they play at clubs.
Yeah.
That's how callous I've become to everything. And then he
Mhm.
was like dancing, and it's just like, it's just so, it's sad. It's so sad. But that is just how frequent it is happening here. Um, where I'm going with this is I guess I'm curious what your thoughts are on, for, you were in law enforcement and then and it, pivoted into leadership, but what do you think the best words of encouragement are for law enforcement officers and law enforcement family in this day and age?
Kristen, we're seeing this in everything. We're starting to see the truth prevail. And I know law enforcement took a beating as a result of the George Floyd, particularly that incident. And the sad part is, I'm on a lot of police networks. Everyone condemned those acts. So there's a small handful of police, just like any other agency, that may be bad players. But when you get defund the police and you're releasing everyone, it has a cost, and the public is starting to see that cost. I just talked to a police officer last week in Georgia, and people are starting to come full circle. And there's already people crying out in the inner cities they need more police because they're scared, and there's drive-by shootings and all these things. So if our country can prevail, I'm telling you, there's going to be a newfound respect for the police, because they're going to get to pull the curtain back and see what a lawless society really produces, and they're going to be begging for police. So I would just encourage any law enforcement officer watching this, hang on, because the light is being shown, and people are going to see and appreciate you again. And I'm starting to see that already.
Oh, good, good. That's good to hear, because I agree. We see a lot of these departments that have been defunded, they're being refunded, Portland included, and they're realizing, oh, maybe getting rid of the gang team or the gun response team wasn't smart. So,
Exactly.
and unfortunately, they've had to learn the hard way. And I think it's going to be at least a decade before they can get the numbers down as low as it was before this, massive catastrophe. But anyhow, that's really, I appreciate the words of encouragement there. And I mean, my husband's hanging in until retirement. So so
Yeah. No, I get it. And I'm not saying that's going to happen
area.
overnight. That's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
But people are starting to see the effects of that. And it
Yes.
always
No,
takes
you're right.
months for things to happen. Well,
You're
even
right.
President Biden in his State of the Union, you heard him say, fund the police. So they're
Right.
even liberals are trying to distance themselves from that narrative, but it was obvious
Right.
who started that. So
Yeah, you're right. I remember him saying that, and I was like, "You're so full of it." I'm like, "You just want, it's just for the primaries, the midterms. You're just trying to." But yeah, yeah, you're right. They are realizing that that's not popular like it was a year and a half ago.
yeah.
So yeah, pretty wild, wild times for sure. All right, where can people find you?
The easiest is my website, again, with the number 44 WARD operations. It'll be on the screen. That's the best way to contact me. I do personal coaching, and I do leadership training for corporations. I'm going to do a medical conference, my first one, next week in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Then I'm going to be doing a medical supply chain. I don't know how I've shifted over into the medical world, but I actually love to do leadership training for churches, law enforcement, of course, and businesses, schools, universities. I'm going to a university in Pennsylvania in October. So, man, I love it. This is what I'm passionate about. It's what I want to do. I want to help people lead, create a good work environment for people, and have them be fulfilled on the job.
I love it. And I love that you're transitioning into the medical world, the medical industry, because if you think about it, they have had so much division over the past couple years, and they have been hit really hard. Morale is very low. So you're coming in
That's
at
what
the
I heard.
right time to help lift some spirits and provide the tools needed to be successful. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. I know we're going to stay in touch after today. And I just really thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come be present. And I know my viewers really appreciate it as well.
I've loved it. I started watching your content like a year ago, and I was
Oh
like, man,
my gosh.
she's tough. I liked it. So here we
Oh,
are.
I didn't know that. Well, thank
Yes,
you. Thank you so much.
absolutely.
Appreciate it. Awesome. Well, you have a wonderful evening. And again, absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much. You
All
too.
right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Wow, I didn't know that. That's a feel good moment right there. But all right, always have great guests on Ksok Uncensored. Please tune in next Thursday. I'll see you then.
My name is Joey Lynn Massaros. I'm a stay-at-home mom in New Braunfels, Texas. My husband Robert is a plumber. Just like many Americans, we enjoy exercising our constitutional right, especially our First Amendment right to exercise free speech. You might remember in 2020 during early election when the Biden-Harris campaign bus drove through New Braunfels, Texas. There was a viral video of a Trump train driving alongside of them, and we were proud to show our support for President Trump. 8 months later, we found out that we were getting sued in federal court under the Ku Klux Klan law of 1871. Triggered Democrat politicians, Biden-Harris campaign staff, and members of the White House cabinet were on the bus and are claiming they're traumatized from our presence next to them and suing us for emotional compensation. They claim we premeditated assault with a plan to ambush the bus and run it off the road, but that never happened. These malicious and frivolous lies are costing our family hundreds of thousands of dollars in the federal court system. We need your help to fight back to defend free speech, not just for our family, but for all Americans. We believe God has called us to this opportunity as a chance to stand up and defend free speech for all Americans, whether we agree or not. So rather than believe that we're being picked on by these Democrats that are suing us in federal court, we see this as a great opportunity to stand up and defend free speech. But we need your help. It takes a lot of money to do this. We have already cashed out our 401k, our savings account, and our child's future fund, just so that we can defend our family's name. We want to be able to hold the left accountable for weaponizing the law system against average Americans, just like you. They think they picked on us, but they don't realize that we believe God chose us as an opportunity to stand up and fight for what's right. You can join our fight to defend free speech at freespeechdefender.com.
Well, hello, my lovelies. Today, we're going to be talking to Scott Shara, whose 19-year-old daughter died because of hospital protocol.